I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'd like to welcome Attorney General Martha Coakley. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks.
I'd like to welcome Healthcare Administrator Dr. Don Berwick, as well as State Treasurer Steve Grossman.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. We'll begin by asking a question of Attorney General Martha Coakley. Recently, your office decided to prosecute or not prosecute a lobbyist firm for illegally taking $370,000 in contingency fees from a children's hospital and instead have them pay a fine of $100,000. Now the Secretary of State is looking into the deal that your office brokered. The Boston Herald reported that the Brennan Group has held at least one fundraiser for you in the past. Your opponent, Steve Grossman here, told the Boston Herald over the weekend, quote, "This is Beacon Hill at its worst, and I think Martha Coakley is the star actor in this play." Do you believe that there was a conflict of interest within this case, and should you, looking back, recuse yourself from the investigation?
Well, let me start. There's some inaccurate premises,
Sure.
facts in your original question.
Okay.
Franciscan Hospital came to us and said, would you look at this? We think there might be an issue. We don't know. We did a thorough investigation on the facts and the law. We had significant statute of limitations issues, many things that come in on whether you can successfully bring a case or not, as well as factual issues. And so we did what we always do and say, how are we going to get the best result for the Commonwealth? We got $100,000 that went back to the hospital that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. We were happy to do that. That was the amount that the group may have been justly enriched by if they had acted incorrectly. We called it as we saw it. I've always done that. We made it transparent, and I certainly think that just as the treasurer has taken over $150,000 from groups that he sees, oversees, and regulates. I don't question that calls into question his judgment. I assume he does the right thing, as I have always done. I stand on the decision we made in the case, and I stand on the transparency that we've had in our fundraising. I have always let people know who is giving money, who isn't, unlike super PACs that the treasurer has taken advantage of or been benefited by without revealing where the money is coming from.
Before I let everybody else respond, can you just tell me what was inaccurate in terms of the question that I first had posed?
Well, you said this came to you for prosecution. It came to us to
No, that you decided not to prosecute it.
Well, because it came to us as an issue to be solved to see, is there a civil or a criminal action you can take? What is the best thing you can do?
Okay.
But you assumed that we decided not to do something we should have done. I just disagree with that premise.
Okay.
I stand on the decision we make. And don't forget, this was $100,000 that went back to that hospital. The hospital's very happy with it. And we called this, as we always do, on the facts and the law.
I'm going to let Grossman actually respond first, if you don't mind, Dr. Berwick, just because it seems as though you should be involved in this response here.
Your own colleague, Maura Healey, who spent 6 years in your office, pretty distinguished Assistant Attorney General, talked about this last week, and she said, clearly, you didn't go far enough. I take that on face value. Here's a lobbyist, a well-connected lobbyist, who raised money for you, who was allowed to walk, laughing all the way to the bank, with $270,000 of money that he got from the Franciscan Hospital for Children, a contract that we all acknowledge was illegal because lobbyists aren't prepared to do that. Martha, I listened to your ad over the weekend, and it says, and I wrote this down, Martha Coakley has spent her career fighting for people without money or power. This is a guy with money, with power, and he was allowed to walk, didn't even get a slap on the wrist, didn't even acknowledge wrongdoing. Elizabeth Warren has said many times, there are Wall Street banks that are too big to fail. I guess on Beacon Hill, there are some people who are just too connected to fail.
I totally disagree again. Look, I respect Maura Healey. She's worked for me. She also said, based on what I know at the time, she made some comments. But I'm the Attorney General, and I have to make the decision and be transparent about it. You've often said, Steve, you're not a lawyer, you're not an expert in law enforcement. I've made the call, I've been transparent about it. We did what we could based on the facts and the law. I've been transparent about where all of my fundraising comes from.
But I know when a guy gives you money, and members of his family may have given you money, and people who work for him, and he did a fundraiser for you, and you make a judgment and allow him to walk with more than 70% of the money that he got from an illegal contract, and that money is still in your pocket, in your campaign coffers that you raised a number of years ago, yet you didn't recuse yourself. I think that's conflict of interest, and that is what I meant about Beacon Hill at its worst. People get up this morning in Quincy, they get up in Billerica, they get up in Boston, and they go to work and play by the rules.
And they may wonder, Steve, why you've taken $150,000 over the years from industries that you oversee. I don't assume you've done anything wrong. I've explained what I've done. I stand on that explanation.
I'd like to let the doctor jump in on this.
Politics as usual. This is bickering. The public isn't concerned about this. The public is out there worried about their jobs. They're worried about their futures. They're worried about the issues of very big money controlling their futures. Very big money is the casino industry coming into this state and convincing us that casinos are good for communities when they will kill communities, destroy them, pulling the wool over the public's eyes and apparently my opponent's eyes. It's big healthcare money, controlling the direction of healthcare in our future when we really need to be getting healthcare costs under control. The public's worried about the inequalities in our society. This political bickering, it isn't right. It's not what's
So Don is totally right, and that's why I've gone after Wall Street, tried to keep people in their homes, over 30,000 people. We brought back money and prevented unnecessary foreclosures. I've gone after the federal government when they've been unfair to our fishing families, to challenge the Defense of Marriage Act. I brought back money from insurance companies, from utilities. I am the one in the last 8 years and before that as district attorney who stood up for people who didn't have a voice in politics.
I'd like to see you stand up against the casino industry and stand up against the status quo healthcare industry, which is raising prices.
But let me come back to the real issue here. We're going to elect a governor on November 4th, and governors have to demonstrate good judgment. And Martha, again and again, I think you've demonstrated bad judgment. Bad judgment in taking money from Brennan and allowing him to walk. The former Inspector General, Greg Sullivan, said it's like somebody robbing a bank and keeping 2/3 of the money. I think you've made a terrible decision, demonstrated bad judgment. Even the Health Policy Commission agrees by allowing Partners Healthcare potentially to get away with a deal.
Well, the Health Policy Commission hasn't weighed in on the Brennan Group as far as I know.
No, what the Health Policy Commission did say is that the deal that you cut with Partners could cost ratepayers, these are men and women who pay health care premiums. These are small businesses, between $15 and $23 million. And to boot, you've in your own campaign finances, you violated campaign finance laws and returned tens of thousands of dollars in fees and penalties.
So
that's bad judgment.
No, let's not mix apples and oranges here, Steve, and let's talk about exactly
what... a pattern of bad judgment, Martha. That's what I'm talking about. A pattern of bad judgment coupled with this. You know, I heard somebody the other day call this lobby gate. When it rises to being called a gate, in this case lobby gate, I suggest that reflects on your judgment, and that's a serious issue for somebody who wants to be governor of Massachusetts.
And that's something that the voters get to decide,
right.
And that's why I have always been transparent about what I do. But let's get back to what Don has said, Steve. This isn't about this issue or that little issue. This is about where we're going in this campaign and how the next governor is going to turn this economy around for everybody. So, Don, I understand your position on casinos. I respect it. The voters get to choose in November. Do you not respect the voters on this issue?
Martha, I think leadership counts here, and the data on
Absolutely.
casinos is absolutely overwhelming, and I don't know why you're running away from the issue that these are big,
I don't run away from it.
Big money lobbied interests coming in, trying to convince us that casinos will be good casinos.
We're gonna get to casinos. I know this is a very important issue for you, and you're the only person in the race that's anti-casino. We will 100% dedicate some time to that. Let's just finish up with this one issue and move on to a lot more pressing issues.
Just remember, Jacqueline, this election is not about each other. It's about the needs of the people, the public out there who are feeling ill-served by politics as usual, by the status quo in which big money is controlling our futures. And we've got to talk about that, about how to get justice and equality into this Commonwealth.
We will do that. I want to let Joe Battenfeld jump in, please.
The voice from the other side. Could I just interject one more follow-up? Attorney General, Secretary of State William Galvin had no knowledge at all that this settlement, that negotiation was taking place. He is the one in charge of lobbyists, of overseeing lobbyists. How could you leave him in the dark?
That's absolutely inaccurate, Joe, also, in the sense that the statute that we were looking at is a criminal statute. We have the authority, the singular authority, to look at and determine whether you can bring a charge. Secretary Galvin has authority over civil issues, and he has an independent ability, and he said he's going to do that now, to take a look at it. We always knew that would happen. That was not a question of keeping him in the dark. It was finishing our case so that then he could review what we had done and whether he needed to take additional action. He's doing that now, and that's completely appropriate.
People in Massachusetts wake up every morning and they go to work and they play by the rules. And they know that if they don't play by the rules, they're going to get hurt. But on Beacon Hill, you can be a lobbyist, well-connected, not play by the rules, walk away with more than $250,000 without even a slap on the wrist from an attorney general who has received money, and I call that the worst form of judgment. That's Beacon Hill at its worst.
Can we move on?
I'd like to move on, because I think Steve hasn't made any points that no one has raised, and we've answered them all. So he can continue to beat that drum, but I will stand on my record of going after well-moneyed institutions, holding hospitals accountable, going after utilities, making sure we bring money back from Wall Street. And I've said, we have the opportunity now to turn this economy around for everybody, not just Wall Street, not just people who have money, not just people at the top. I agree with Don. The question is, we all agree, who's going to have the experience and the qualities involved to do that? And that's what this discussion should be about. That's what voters want to hear.
Thank you very much. I've heard all of you sort of give your support to the governor in terms of the approach that he's taken in stepping in and trying to help resolve this issue because it affects so many jobs in Massachusetts. But I do want to ask you guys, which I'm not sure that you've answered this before, should the governor be telling workers to get back to work? Is that really his place? It's one thing to sort of come in as an independent party and try to help the two come up with a solution, but is it his place to tell workers get back to work and stop protesting something that they believe in? Don Berwick, I'd like to start with you on that, please.
Well, I think Governor Patrick and Governor Hassan both behaved with dignity in this case. They stood back a while a private issue tried to get worked out, but the stakes for the Commonwealth are high. This is an important company, and I think they stepped in at the right time to try to make peace. What I really think about the market basket issue is how much respect I have for the workers who really did something very noble. They stood up for managers. They stood up for the kind of worker economy that I understand. I'm an executive. I grew a small company to a global scale. I know what modern quality management looks like. That was a company doing the right thing. And when things fell apart because of squabbles inside, the workers stood up with great courage.
But should the governor?
I think he stepped in at the right time.
Not what he stepped in terms of telling workers get back to work. Is that his place?
I suspect he meant he was not the hope that they would get back to work, and that he, like all of us, we want an important institution in this Commonwealth to thrive and get back to helping serve the customers as they always have.
I don't think these workers honestly needed a lecture from anybody. They decided of their own volition, knowing the stakes, that they had worked for a company and for an owner, a leader, for years. Their lives were at stake. They said, we're going to stand up for ourselves and for this owner because we want him back, because this company was great because of his leadership and because we contributed. You know, I know this because, look, I ran a company for 35 years. We treated our workers with great dignity. Gave them earned sick time for 25 years. Union shop, we never had a matter go to arbitration, not once in 62 years. And to me, these workers are doing what they believe is in their best interest. And at the end of the day, what I hope is that there is a deal, that maybe RDT gets to lead this company again and buy the company. 25,000 jobs are at stake, many of them here in Massachusetts. It's a Massachusetts company, that we need this company to be great again, and these workers have every right to do what they want to do. That's their choice. Okay,
so you think that the governor overstepped basically by telling these workers to get back to work, yes or no?
I would not have given the workers the lecture that he gave them, but I would have stepped in as early as I could have, being comfortable with union negotiations and trying to bring parties together, and offered my help, even though it's a private company. If they wanted me, they could have had me. If they said, Governor, we don't need you, then I would have gone away, but I would have offered my help as early as I could have in the process.
Thank you.
So I agree with Don, this is an extraordinary set of circumstances where employees have said, without a safety net, we want to support a particular individual because he's invested in us, he cares about us. We know that we will be treated fairly under him. I am disappointed that even today we don't have a resolution. I believe if the parties really want to reach a resolution, they can. All the ingredients are there. I'm still hopeful they will. I do think that the governor of both states, Maggie Hassan and Deval Patrick, did come to the table at some stage. I did disagree with the governor at the time he made those comments. I think they were well-meaning, but I think the employees at this stage have been so committed to working under the old administration, under Arthur T., that they weren't going to come back. And I do think both governors have made great inroads, and I know we've taken a position, the Attorney General's office, to advise both the employees and the employers that there are rights that attach. We've protected some of those rights so far. No one has really been laid off. I know the part-time workers, though, have lost their hours. I was up in Gloucester last weekend, and there were people going to the Gloucester food pantry because they don't have the hours at Market Basket. So I'm hopeful people will come back together.
So, Attorney General, would you have told the workers to get back to work?
I would not have. Okay. Under all the facts and circumstances.
Just a quick follow-up for Dr. Berwick. Just wanted to ask, in terms of the 2009 boycott of Hyatt, and that was dealing with workers there, do you see sort of the contradiction there in terms of Governor Patrick asking to boycott a company, or do you support his decision? Would you have done the same thing back then as well?
Yes, I would have supported labor. I think that labor is a very important component of standing up for people who really need their rights protected in this Commonwealth. You know, we have growing inequality in the Commonwealth, in the nation, and the people at lower ends of the earning spectrum, they need leaders who are going to stand up for them and not let big money control their futures.
You don't see that as a contradiction?
Pardon me?
You don't see that as a contradiction in terms of backing union workers, but telling non-union workers to get back to work?
No, not at all. As I said, I think with respect to the market basket scene, I think the governor was saying, let's try to make this company well again. But defending unions is key to the future of this Commonwealth. We need leaders that are going to stand up and make sure that workers are protected, and they're protected by protecting their incomes. We just passed an $11 an hour minimum wage. That's hardly enough. $11 an hour is just below the federal poverty line, I think, for a family of 4. Earned sick time, disability benefits, worker rights, that really, really matters. We ought to be aiming for a living wage. Seattle just went to a $15 an hour. It's heading for a $50 an hour wage. That money circulates. It's job growth we're talking about. Defending unions, defending workers' rights is absolutely essential to leadership in this Commonwealth.
Owners of companies, and I was an owner, still have a minority interest in the company, and I ran a company for 35 years. They got to recognize that the men and women who get up every day and go to work, they're the backbone of the company. This market basket company, $5 billion in sales almost. Great company. Something that customers have flocked to for years. This company is only as good as the quality of the men and women who go to work every day. And the people who go to work every day in the nice suits and the nice cars have to know that those are the backbone of the company. I knew that all the years in which I ran our company. It's 104 years old, 4 generations, and the market basket people understand that. And the sooner they recognize that it's those men and women who have been out on the street at great peril to their own families and to their being able to make their car payments, they're the heroes. They're the heroes of this battle.
Great.
That's why we hope we have an agreement very soon.
Exactly. So now we're going to play the beginning part of a recent ad from Charlie Baker where he attacks both Martha Coakley and Steve Grossman. Let's roll that. So first, I spoke with the Baker campaign and asked, what they were referring to in terms of these billions of dollars in new spending, and they said that it had to do with extending the school day as well as having universal pre-K for everybody. So I said, okay, that being said, what's the question that you have for the candidates? So let's roll the question that they have in terms of this video that he first posted up throughout there. So we'll start with Attorney General Martha Coakley. How would you pay for the extended school day as well as universal pre-K?
So the first question,
and please be specific
sure.
in terms of the plan.
Well, sure, but it would be helpful if Charlie Baker had come to a lot of the forum that have been on early education, on the importance of investing in our kids, investing in our teachers, and why making that investment. He's a business guy. He should know this, that investing in our people is the best way to go. So it's easy for him because he's been really absent from all the discussions we've had with independents and other Republican candidates around what we need to do moving forward in Massachusetts. So we've all said the same thing, that we come in halfway through the year, we look at where the budget is, we see businesses turning around revenues, we see an increased ability to say, where do we need to be investing what we already have? I believe that it is in our kids in pre-K. We don't do it all overnight. We hope that as the economy turns around, cities and towns will have more from their taxes at the local level, and that the state will play a bigger role.
But please, if you don't mind.
This dollar sign.
Fine. So let's put aside the dollar sign, but let's try to not talk so much about the. I know you're going to talk about the importance of pre-K, and if you read by the age of 3rd grade, it would cost $400,000, for the state. I know all the statistics as to why pre-K is important for everybody, but I really want to know how you pay for it.
Well, I'm not saying that you necessarily have to look someplace else or raise taxes. He's got a wrong assumption there. I think we realign our priorities to look at what we have, where we're spending it. I say we start with education, early education. We look at what it's going to cost us, and then we figure out what else we want to invest in.
Well, what are the priorities that you would realign from?
Looking at what we spend on convention centers or in the criminal justice system. My colleagues have talked about that. I agree with that. We spend a lot of money at the back end in houses of correction, and in the criminal justice system, nobody knows that better than us.
So
we spend more on mental health. We spend more keeping people out of trouble, invest in our people. That's the difference between
Charlie Baker's going to be a problem. He's going to be well-moneyed, and people are very, very worried about us losing another big one on the Democratic side. So we got to take this seriously. But this is a guy tied to the Tea Party. The codes when his ads have to do with increasing, not decreasing injustice in our society. We do need to fund the future. People are at risk. Job growth is the key. We need job growth. That's transportation development, smart growth. It means investing in the innovation economy, helping kids get ready for the economy at large, standing up for worker rights, getting out of the way of business with regulations. It means healthcare reform. Healthcare is 42% of the state budget, 18% of our economy, 30% of it is waste. And we need a governor in that corner office who really understands healthcare reform, which I've worked on for 30 years. I started a small company. I grew it to world-class size. I didn't inherit it. I started an organization, and I know how big healthcare costs are as a burden. Job growth and healthcare reform and single-payer healthcare go together. Let me just say also, there are tax loopholes, euphemistically called tax expenditures, that amount to probably $2 billion, some portion of that. This is unfair. We need to claw back deals that are made with businesses, and if they don't add jobs, close those loopholes. And I favor fair taxation. I will support a tax code in which people at higher levels of income pay higher rates, and people at lower levels of income pay lower rates.
I just want to let Joe jump in on that, please.
I just caught, you say Charlie Baker's tied to the Tea Party? How is that?
Well, he picked Karen Polito, whose background is certainly very conservative. If you read the Republican Party platform, I find it embarrassing for the state. And this is a man who's tied to very big business. He was an insurance company executive. I don't know if his instincts favor the kind of progressive agenda for developing the rights of workers, the well-being of people at disadvantage, the inclusion of minorities, the kind of thing that I stand for in this race.
If you're going to make proposals to improve the quality of people's lives, whether it's around transportation, universal pre-K, whatever it happens to be, you've got an obligation as governor or as a candidate for governor to tell people how you're going to pay for it. And I've said that there are basically 4 ways that you can pay for the priorities that we believe are going to improve quality of life. 1, growing the economy. I've spent my life creating jobs, spent my 4 years as state treasurer helping to create jobs. We need to grow the economy. That's why I've said we've got to create 75 to 100,000 new jobs. 2nd, public-private partnerships. You challenge the business community. You challenge foundations to invest in universal pre-K. You challenge the business community to step up and help create 5,000 summer internships, paid summer internships. You save money. I have a record as treasurer, saved tens of millions of dollars. We are reducing the cost of managing the state's pension fund by $100 million a year. That's real money, and you invest that back into the economy. And finally, I won't take revenue off the table, and I haven't taken revenue off the table. But if we do go that route, if that's the route we choose collectively as a society, and you have to build political consensus around it, then I think the most important thing is to make sure that the tax code holds harmless low and middle income families. That's just about fairness and being more progressive.
So,
and that's earned income tax credit, that's exemptions, and that's the property tax.
So in terms of the economy, you have said multiple times, even on Boston Herald Radio, in terms of comparing yourself and Martha Coakley, you've said a number of times, do you want a progressive jobs creator or do you want a career prosecutor as your next governor? Are you implying that you don't think that Martha Coakley is equipped or capable of creating jobs in the Commonwealth?
Well, I'm suggesting that my life story, 35 years running a successful business, and my 4 years as treasurer, where I basically almost on day 1 said, where's our money? And I found out that 60% of our money was in banks overseas. And I said, let's bring that money back, let's put it in local banks. We've done that. We focused on small business lending. Small businesses in the private sector are the backbone of our economy. So what's happened? We are helping facilitate making loans to businesses owned by women, people of color, immigrants and veterans, and we are helping to create jobs all over the state. So I have
But can she create jobs? Are you saying she can't create jobs because she's spent her life being, you know, an assistant DA, a DA, and then the Attorney General? Does that not give her the credentials to be governor and to create jobs?
She may very well, but the fact of the matter is, I think when you hire a chief executive to run a state with 85,000 employees, a $36 billion budget, and a job creation, which is the most important thing, that and economic security, hiring somebody who has a proven track record in the small business sector, in the private sector, creating jobs in a progressive way, and who's used his 4 years as treasurer to do the same and to accelerate that, That's a background and that's a foundation on which I want to build as governor.
So first I want to say something else about Charlie Baker, because when I first came in as Attorney General, we were faced with the big dig. Remember that tunnel had just collapsed on Molina del Valle, killed because some company used the wrong glue. Charlie Baker, we can call him Charlie Big Dig Baker, talks about spending now against Democrats. He left behind that mess that wasn't overseen, it was cost overruns. I came in as Attorney General with federal, state, civil, criminal cost overruns, a dead woman, and we sorted that out. We went through and resolved that with $500 million in trust so that people now in Massachusetts aren't going to pay for a flawed tunnel. That's his business management, that's his looking at taxpayer dollars? I don't think so, and I'm the one who came to resolve that. I also believe that the work that we've been able to do here, you know, we grow jobs in lots of different ways. One of them in government is making sure we reduce barriers to healthcare costs and energy costs. We've done that, I'll continue to do that. And I guess I have a question for Steve, because you talk about, you know, your expertise as a progressive job creator. It's come to my attention, and I'd love you to answer why it is your campaign has shipped jobs out of state. You have outsourced all of your campaign signs, and you know, we've done all that here in Massachusetts. If you want to keep jobs in Massachusetts, you have to keep them in Massachusetts.
Well, the fact is the vast majority of the printing that is done, all union printing is done at Standard Modern Printing Company in Brockton. We're their single largest customer. As a matter of fact, our company grew its business so much with Standard Modern that they actually bought a new printing press and hired people. So,
but I'm talking about your campaign.
Well, I'm talking about my campaign, and we have bought the vast majority of our printing over in Brockton and have kept people working in one of the toughest, most heavily impacted cities in the state. So I'm proud of my record of being a jobs creator.
But you're hearing the problem here. Listen to the debate here, back and forth and back and forth. Look, running for office is different from managing. My opponents have run collectively 10 races for 6 different offices. They're professional politicians. In the corner office, you need someone who understands management and leadership. I started an organization, I grew it to world impact. I ran the largest agency in federal government. I've taught, practiced, and learned modern approaches to management. That involves mobilizing a workforce so they have pride and joy in their work. It means using data properly. It means supporting innovation inside the organization and around the world. It means having global brains so you think about innovations that you can bring into the economy. It means focusing day to day on the hard job of managing. This kind of politics, political back and forth, it doesn't help people. What helps people is making government effective for people. That, by the way, is part of the answer to the earlier question about saving money. Government well run reduces waste continually. That's what I've worked on for 30 years. I've taught it and practiced it all over the world. We need an executive in the corner office.
All right, Doctor, I'm going to give him the last word here and just shift here. One of the things, and this is for Attorney General Coakley, a lot of people sort of raised an eyebrow when it was revealed that Steve Grossman's very sweet mom had given him $100,000 to a super PAC in terms of getting him elected for governor. Do you think maybe the super PAC law should be expanded to somehow bar family members from donating to campaigns?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to go that far. And now we know why Don has advertised for kids who look like me and Steve, because he feels that, you know, we're the little kid squabbling here. You know, in fairness, both Steve and I have been out on the front lines doing things here in Massachusetts. It's not actually easy every day to do what Steve is doing in the Treasurer's office, to deal with the cases that I've done in District Attorney as AG. I stand on that record, and we have to have good ideas, and we need to move forward. We also need people that can implement them, and I believe my record shows that we can do that. On the super PAC issue, look, I've said since Citizens United was passed that it's divisive, it is destructive to democracy. I've worked with other attorneys general to make sure we overcome that. We need to pass a constitutional amendment in the short run. All we've done in Massachusetts, and it was a good first step, was require disclosure. I have no issue with family members supporting others in the race. And good for Steve, and good for Shirley for supporting.
Do you sort of wish that your mom almost didn't get that donation, because there's been so many questions and there's been a lot of bad press? I mean, it seems like it's almost going to cost you $100,000 to do away with the work that your mom's did in terms of the check that you wrote. Looking back on it, do you? I mean, and I know that you said there was no collusion or anything, but would it almost be easier if she hadn't given you the money at this point?
Well, she didn't give me the money.
Well, she gave it to Super PAC, which ultimately is giving it to your campaign, so indirectly.
So you should pick up my phone and call my mother when the show is over and say, Shirley, we've heard a lot about you, but I haven't met you. will you come into the Herald and spend
We would,
a little time
if
with
you
us?
give me her number, I will totally invite her, and she is welcome on morning meeting tomorrow morning starting at 9:15.
617-244-4265.
You can't give your grandma, your mother's number on the air.
My mother is very cool. My mother's
That's amazing.
My mother's 92 years old. She still goes to work 2 days a week, and she has been the glue that's kept our family together for a long time. When I called
She sounds
her,
like a nice lady, though, but isn't it, honestly, I mean, you've had to answer a lot of questions about this, and it's been more bad press than, you know, the money that she's spent on you has cost you a lot in your campaign.
well, listen, my mother made a decision of her own volition. She said, I called her one day. We've had one conversation about this. When I saw the names up on television, I said, Mom, I assume that's you. I don't know too many other Shirley Grossmans. She said, yeah, that is me. She said, I have my own money, I make my own decisions. I said, thank you, Mom, this conversation is over. So what my mom chooses to do, you know, what she said was, she said, look, you've been a great treasurer, you'd be a terrific governor, and I'm going to do whatever I can to support
All right,
that.
we're going to keep it all
I just think, please, you know, here we're talking about a mother giving some support to her son. I'm sure she loves him, and I doubt there's a
well, support is a pack in the back. I mean, $100,000, that's not chump change.
All right,
she
well-
loves him. Let's cut him a little slack.
Okay.
We'll keep it all in the family, though, here. This is for all of you, and then we're going to take a quick break, I believe. Starting with you, Don Berwick, Charlie Baker claims that a Republican is needed in the corner office to prevent the sort of patronage that led to the probation department scandal. If elected, will you take an anti-patronage pledge, basically promising not to elect higher relatives or close friends or strong political supporters?
I think patronage is bad for the Commonwealth. You know, I'm very progressive. I want to see the public trust the government to be able to reach out and help people that really need help. The middle class that's worried about its jobs and its future, you know, people who are feeling excluded. So we need to get people to begin to trust government. When patronage occurs, it's not a good thing. I think in the Commonwealth, the general rule should be that people that fill offices of responsibility should be at the highest possible level of competence for those offices.
So would you take an anti-patronage pledge and refuse to hire relatives or?
Refuse to hire relatives?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I will look for the most competent people to be in position and make sure that everyone does that. The key is service to the Commonwealth. It's making sure that people in position have, it's not anti-something, it's pro-something, it's pro-competence.
Steve, Treasurer Grossman.
No, I will not hire relatives. I didn't hire any relatives when I was elected state treasurer, and I certainly will hire no relatives. I think that's a bad idea, and no matter how competent the relative might be, it sends a bad message to the people of Massachusetts. Look, when I was sworn in on January 19th of 2011, I stood in front of the people of Massachusetts and I said two things. First, we're going to hire the best people for every job. Why? Because in my business for 35 years, that's what I did, and grew a great company because we hired the best people. And then I also said that we would make sure that our hiring practices would reflect the diversity of the society in which we live. You don't have to make a choice between great people and being diverse. This is a great Commonwealth with over 1 million people who weren't even born here. Immigrant entrepreneurship has been our strength for 400 years. So if we can come together and celebrate our diversity and hire the best people and send a message that we are no longer going to engage in patronage scandals like the probation scandal. That's over. If the governor himself, as I said last week, had called me, and he never did, but if he called me and said, my next door neighbor's daughter just graduated from college and can you find a job, I would say, Governor, this conversation is over. You want to send a letter in? Public record? This is also about public records. It's about public trust. If you don't hire the best people, public trust goes downhill. If your public trust goes downhill, you can't govern and you can't lead. So we revolutionized our hiring practices, brought in a new leader, and I said, throw the old book away and bring a new book in. That's what we've done, and I'm very proud of the work that Jesse St. Cyr has done, our Deputy Treasurer for Human Resources.
I'm going to keep an eye out for that neighbor of yours who's heading up the super PAC. Attorney General Coakley, where are you in this?
So I think the next governor has the responsibility to make sure that whatever had gone so badly wrong in probation, in fact, has been corrected as an institutional matter with good hiring and disclosure. On the family member thing, you know, that we have rules about who you can and can't hire, and then we have tough disclosure laws on through the Ethics Commission. So perhaps one of the issues is looking at, are those strong enough, are they tough enough? You know, to bar people just because of something isn't always the issue. It's the same reason we have conflicts of ethics law on hiring, on who we accept money from. So to me, the best antidote is disclosure, making sure that these kinds of things are disclosed. If there's a conflict, there's an ethics commission, and maybe we need to tighten rules on that.
To me, this is an insider-outside issue for me. I think we need an outsider to come into the corner office, somebody that's not been part of the interior workings of this Commonwealth for years and years. Public trust really matters, and we need a new direction.
So it sounds like you're not taking the anti-pledge here. It sounds like you want to be open to hiring close friends or campaign supporters.
Well, no, but let me give, no, not at all. Let me give you a good example. Don's wife is a terrific head of an agency. Does that mean when Dawn comes in that she can't continue to serve? I mean, you can make disclosures and you can talk about it. I'd hate to see Ann Berwick disqualified from what she does if Dawn is successful. So there are issues in a state that's small, relatively, but I think the first issue is disclosure and making sure there's no conflict or appearance of conflict.
The Boston Herald is full of stories all the time about people who are hired and who are a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law or whatever the relationship is. And every time you read that story, your heart sinks a little bit because you know that it is undermining public trust, like it's an inside game. And this is the worst of Beacon Hill. Again, hiring your relatives is wrong. I won't do it. I don't think anybody should do it.
All right, on that.
I'd like to hire Shirley if she's available.
I should be working for 3 days a week now instead of 2.
Absolutely.
All right, why don't we take a quick break? When we come back, we've got all of the Democratic gubernatorial candidates. Stay tuned here on Morning Meeting.
Welcome back. I'm Jacqueline Cashman. She is Hillary Chabot. You are listening to Morning Meeting. We have the 3 Democratic candidates running for governor in studio right now. And they actually get along during the break, in case anybody's wondering. They don't sort of like look down and just look at their notes the whole time. So that's good news here.
Jacqueline, we've spent more time together than we have with our families in the last, so we do get along.
I like to see that. So I just want to welcome back again Attorney General Martha Coakley. Appreciate you being here. Healthcare Administrator Dr. Don Berwick and State Treasurer Steve Grossman. Next question goes to Dr. Don Berwick, and it has to do with casinos. You are the only anti-casino candidate in the race for governor. With that being said, this fall, how will you fill the budget gap? If voters decide we don't want casinos in Massachusetts, right now the budget is relying on $73 million to fill that hole. How will you fill that hole?
I am the only candidate against casinos and for the repeal. Let me be really clear. Casinos destroy communities. We have to think longer term here. The evidence is unequivocal. There are 39 states with casinos. They shutter small businesses. Net jobs are lost, not gained. The idea that they bring jobs into the Commonwealth is simply wrong. Look at the data. Look at the studies. They cause problems in public safety. They raise DUI. They raise drunk driving. They raise prostitution and rates of petty crime in their neighborhoods. They raise the rates of gambling addiction, which is a serious problem in Illinois. In one study, the number of seriously gambling addicted people who are self-excluded, that is, they're people who say they're gambling addicted and won't let themselves into casinos, exceeds the number of jobs added in casinos. The estimates are you lose 1 job for every slot machine. And
$73 million. Let's talk about the $73 million.
We have to get healthcare reform serious in this state. We have to stare down the big moneyed healthcare interests in this state and begin to move towards a healthcare system that is oriented around prevention and wellness and keep people out of the hospital.
How much money do you expect to save from that? Just because you've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah, the estimates in Massachusetts, it's about $20 to $30 billion of money to save from improvements in our healthcare system. $20 billion would be a good estimate statewide. It's 42% of our state budget. About 30% is just waste. Half of that waste is paperwork. It's moving things around that hassle doctors and nurses because we have a very complex payment system. Single-payer healthcare, which we should move to as just as fast as we can, is the single biggest job creator and the biggest potential revenue source in this Commonwealth. I stand for single-payer healthcare without any equivocation. We need to go there as fast as we can. Short-term hits are going to hurt us in the long run. And with respect to state revenues, the studies done in most of the states that have looked at it say that the revenues that casinos add get lost because the communities in the states have to put money into public safety investments, mental health care. They raise state costs, and if you think it saves $73 million, look again, because if not in the first year, immediately downstream, we're going to start to have additional problems with costs that are added by casinos. It's a terrible policy, but plus, let me say one other thing. This is a state, like the rest of the nation, plagued by inequality. People who really can't get into the economy, they're poor, they have low incomes. Casinos are predators on the poor. Look at their business models. Look at what they do. And the idea that a progressive, my opponents, would stand up and allow that kind of injury to occur to the very people they claim to be defending, I just can't go there. It's irresponsible leadership.
So I've said, and I mean this, I mean, it's not the first place I ever would have gone for economic development. The governor was going to do this when a tough time, and then we didn't, and then we did, and the legislature voted for it. So
Martha, it's not economic development, it's economic decay.
No, I'm saying that's not where I would have gone. I've said the legislature voted for it, Don.
Then be a leader and say no.
Well, but what about people's legislation and people who get to vote on this?
We have a referendum and a grassroots movement. Do you know that in East Boston, the anti-casino forces won that referendum, even though they were outspent 83-1? The people will talk.
No, good for them. That's the discussion.
And be a leader for the people, Martha. Why are you backing down from a progressive position?
All right, so let me...
I would like to the Attorney General
Go ahead,
respond to that.
Yeah, and so, look, this is an issue that people need to talk about. There are different models. The governor was very careful to say, we're going to have at most 3 casinos. We're not having slot parlors all along, you know, the Housatonic River. This is a different model. We have a money laundering statute. We have to make sure that it's highly regulated and that people don't get credit who shouldn't have it.
I don't know what you think. Is it yes or no? Do you want casinos or not?
Well, this is one of the issues in this debate, that many people want a yes or no. I have said at this stage I won't vote to repeal it. I've said, though, that if people vote for it here, we have to make sure that we put time and energy into realizing the economic benefits from it and mitigating the damages. We also have a lot of things we need to do around addressing mental health, and we've talked about this extensively. We need to invest in that. And if Springfield wants to build a single casino that will have, you know, suppliers from Massachusetts giving them food and getting an identity
That's
out there.
talking around the issue, Martha. That's not answering it. And Springfield will look like Niagara Falls, New York,
I disagree.
or Ledyard, Connecticut,
I disagree.
or Northern Mississippi.
That's why we're having the debate,
Right,
debate on the repeal.
So I supported the expansion of casino gambling in Massachusetts for 2 reasons. I read very carefully the study that had been done by the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, and they said that it would create 15,000 jobs, half in the construction trades, half in the service sector of the economy. Jobs that average $45,000 with health benefits, with pension benefits. These will be mostly union jobs. So I said that we're also spending, Massachusetts people are spending, about $840 million a year in Connecticut, at Mohegan Sun, at Foxwoods, and in Rhode Island at Twin Rivers. So I said, if Massachusetts people are spending $840 million, and the revenue of the state is 25% of that, that's over $200 million of revenue that Massachusetts people are now spending outside of Massachusetts that they'll bring back here.
Steve, I don't know where you get the $800 million figure. The University of Massachusetts Dartmouth study said it was $93 million Massachusetts dollars going to Connecticut.
Well, that's not the studies that I've seen. I believe
It seems like there are a lot of studies out there that sort of contradict one another.
And
But I just want to follow.
Some of them, many of them are supported by the casino industry.
Yeah, but
They've given millions of dollars to research groups that come up with the findings they want to see.
Mike Widmer.
I just want to let Joe Battenfield jump into this for a second, please.
Just one point,
Yes,
Joe.
go ahead,
Mike
go ahead.
Widmer and the Mass Taxpayers Foundation are not funded by the casino interests. Mike Widmer is as solid an analyst of budget trends as you have in the state. And he did an analysis. At a time when we still have, even though construction jobs are more plentiful around Boston, go to southeastern Mass, as I was yesterday and I'll be this afternoon.
Okay,
Go to
let's.
Springfield.
I want to
This
let
is
Joe
about-
jump in, please. I apologize. We just want to keep this
I
going.
just, on the casino issue, Mr. Burke, there is on the ballot, if you were elected governor and voters reject the casino repeal referendum, what are you going to do? The voters will have spoken, say, we want casinos. Your job as governor will be to get as much revenue as you can from casino developers, right?
My job as governor is to make sure the casinos don't hurt the communities they're in. We have to make sure that the commission, the gaming commission, absolutely implements every single letter of that law. We are going to have to increase investments in public safety because DUI will rise, and I definitely oppose what the treasurer is in favor of, which is expansion eventually to online gambling. This is a very bad direction for
agree.
So
with
will
John
you,
on
as
that.
governor, then implement this law if the voters say, listen, we want casinos to stay?
Of course I will. The governor's job is to implement the law, but I would implement it in a way that tries to mitigate the effects of this terrible policy.
On that note, last week, Republican Charlie Baker said that if the voters this fall repeal the casino law, he said if he becomes governor, he will file legislation to ensure that Springfield still gets a casino, because he's always believed that we should have one casino in Massachusetts. Springfield seems like the right place. Steve Grossman, would you do the same? Because you seem like you're in favor of casinos.
I am in favor of casinos, but I'm also in favor of listening to the will of the people. This is a democracy, and if the people of Massachusetts, a majority of them say we don't want casinos on November 4th, I would not file legislation, and matter of fact, if legislation was filed, I wouldn't support that legislation as governor. I think you have to let the people speak and let the people make this decision. That's what democracy is all about. If you take away from the people of Massachusetts the right to make a decision, and I mean, there are 4 ballot questions on the ballot this year, and we got to pay attention to what the people say. If you don't, then you undermine the very democracy that we care so deeply about. So I would not support expansion of casino gambling, even in one place, if the people say no.
I just want to say, I was in Springfield again yesterday. I've been there many times. Look, my heart is with that city. This is one of the cities in our Commonwealth that really needs help. It needs us to help them deal with the economic stress. I think the graduation rate for high school students there has just crept over 60%. They have high levels of poverty and a lot of problems with violence. They're trying hard. It's a city trying hard, and I want to help them. And I'm just saying to the people of Springfield, please, please look at the information. Don't get the wool pulled over your eyes by big money lobbyists who are out there trying to convince you to do something that's really bad.
Attorney General?
So I think we need to take this one step at a time. Let's see what the vote is. One of the interesting things in this statute, which makes it different from some of the states that Don is talking about, is it's taken into account local issues and local control. We do give people the opportunity to say whether they want it in their community or not. Springfield has said they want it. I don't reach a conclusion on that, but let's see where the vote goes.
Would you ever do what Baker is implying here?
I think we could revisit if Springfield really wants to do it and that vote is solid. I think we'd look at what people said. I do ultimately trust people to make these decisions.
I think when you basically take the view of the people, you take the ballots, and you basically say, I don't care what the people voted, we're going to do it anyhow. I think you undermine any sense of trust that people have that their vote matters. If the majority, and I'm not going to vote for repeal, I'm going to vote against repeal. I've been clear on that. But if the people vote to repeal, we'll find the $73 million.
That's a clear choice, too.
I'm just going to move forward here.
By the way, Hillary, we'll find the $73 million. We have a $36.5 billion budget. We'll find it. If we have to go to a rainy day fund, we'll go to the rainy day fund to find the money.
One of the few things that we've seen from our recent governors, Romney and Deval Patrick, Republicans and Democrats, is that they tend to go on a lot of trips, sort of as their terms are ending up. Wondering if you will put a limit on the number of junkets taken. And I'll start with you, Attorney General.
Well, we know how you feel since you call them junkets, right? How you label something tells you how you feel about it. Hey, look, I've spent my whole life in Massachusetts. I grew up in North Adams. You know, I went to college and law school here. I've lived in different parts of the state. I do like to travel, but my commitment's going to be to Massachusetts and building an economy here, investing in education, our workforce. If it's going to be helpful to grow jobs and bring businesses here, because I think we should roll out a red carpet for business, cut through red tape, and if it's going to be helpful for that to do travel, either by me or other members in my administration, I pride myself on the good people that I will bring in as governor, as I have as Attorney General, to say we're going to make Massachusetts prosperous and fair, then I will do that. But I think that we have to be focused on how we invest in our training and our workforce and how we roll out a red carpet for business.
You know, Hillary, I'm not a politician. Obviously, I'm an executive manager. I've grown an organization to worldwide status and trying to affect healthcare all over the world. And one of the principles there is what are called global brains. You have to really think about who in the world might have an answer, might have an idea that could help you. And too narrow-mindedness about that, we restrict our options. So yes, I commend the governor for his outreach, for putting Massachusetts on the map on a global scale. It's a two-way street. It'll generate business opportunities for us, and that's a really important opportunity. We can become supplier to the world in many of the technologies that we now have. And also, and our arts and other ways that we have things to export, and I think we can learn from the world. And I'll be a governor that thinks globally about how to have Massachusetts be on the map with respect to the entire planet.
Look, I'll spend the bulk of my time in Massachusetts, our 26 gateway communities that need help. But let me just tell you a really brief story. I had an opportunity to be with a German business owner named Bodo Liesenfeld. He's bringing 150 jobs to Chicopee. First time somebody's brought that many jobs to Chicopee in 40 years. If we go to Hamburg, Germany, and we can bring a Bodo Liesenfeld and make windows back to Chicopee and create jobs in Chicopee, one of the toughest and most heavily afflicted cities in Massachusetts, that's a good thing. The governor
You know,
should do
it's
that.
interesting you bring that up because I want to push back on something because I know your tax plan, if you basically give a tax break to a business and they don't end up creating jobs, you want to be able to take that tax break away from them.
It's called a clawback.
Okay,
yeah.
so why not the same thing? If you're as governor, you go overseas to Germany and you're there to bring jobs and you don't bring jobs, how about your campaign pay for your junket?
Well, I think you got to go places where
Well, is that, hey, I'm a taxpayer, tell me, is that unreasonable?
No, it's not unreasonable. And I think if you're going to go on a business trip and you're going to spend taxpayers' money, you've got to have a very clear purpose, you've got to have a pretty serious set of results, and you've got to have performance metrics.
So should there be a metric that we as taxpayers should see? If you're going to go to Panama and you're going to go to Asia and you're going to go wherever, that's fine and dandy, but bring back jobs.
I
So
agree.
should there be a metric that we end up getting to see?
I think there are metrics, and it's jobs and it's investment. And if you can go in advance and say, here's why I'm going to Panama, not later on, but here's why I'm going, here are the jobs I believe, here are the businesses I'm going to visit, and here are the relationships. We're a global economy, and we need to be a global economy. We do export to the world already. 40% of our exports go to Europe now. That is huge, and that's why governors need to go on trips.
I think Joe wants to jump in on something.
Thinking like a businessman, not politically. These are investments. You're absolutely right. These are investments in the future. They pay off. Do you know that 60% of the new businesses in Massachusetts are started by first-generation immigrants? But
Yes,
the
we
idea
do.
that we can
that.
participate.
That sounds like the Geico ad, John.
It's, the involvement with people of all sorts of backgrounds reaching out around the planet, it's a really interesting option for Massachusetts. We need to keep
Joe wanted to jump in on
Well, I
something
just
earlier.
think the overall issues that people are concerned, the governor is out of state. All of our last few governors have been out of state a lot during their term. But I think we should move on probably to another issue. I don't know if you want to.
So I just wanted to ask the question of Steve Grossman. One group that's going to be very important on September 9th are females. So what do you say to a woman when she tells you, a lot of your agenda sounds really interesting, but I want to elect a female? You know, we've never elected a female in Massachusetts. What do you say to that?
I'd say to most women, which I believe is true of them, they elect the best leader. Whether it's a man or a woman, they're going to elect the best leader who represents their needs. And I want to be that governor who says to that woman, number one, I'm all in for universal pre-K, which is going to take 25,000 of our kids, lift them up, and give them a chance to learn. As treasurer, I've demonstrated a commitment to women and to leveling the playing field for women. We've had, by the way, equal pay for equal work in my family business for 25 years. I don't need any lectures about 77 cents for women. But over and over again, we've poured money into banks that have loaned money to women. We have changed our procurement so that women and minority-owned businesses can compete more successfully. We changed our voting guidelines.
So it's not the time for a female to be governor of Massachusetts?
Well, that's up to the people of Massachusetts.
Don Berwick, what do you say?
Time for competence in the corner office. You know, I say elect a feminist. I'm as strong a feminist as anyone at this table and anyone in this race. I spent my career fighting for reproductive rights, for women's health. I've worked all over the world to help women improve the quality of their lives. When the Tea Party governor in Indiana, Mitch Daniels, tried to shut down Planned Parenthood while I was running Medicare and Medicaid. It went to the court and stopped him. I'm completely with women's rights. And let me tell you, you know what the evidence is? The more voice that women have, the more they're listened to and really have control over what's happening, absolutely the better things get. And that's exactly the kind of policy I'll defend in the corner office.
So what greater voice could we have than to have our first elected woman governor? You know, I agree with my colleagues. The voters should vote on, you know, what we've experienced and what we're going to do in the office. When I graduated from law school, my dad said, sometimes the best man for the job is a woman. And I talk about that. I've worked hard in very many, you know, male-dominated areas. I've worked for victims. I've worked for women. I've talked with moms who have adult kids who are addicted. I understand a lot of issues because I've lived them, but we all have that experience. And I would ask the voters to look at what we've done, what our priorities are going to be, and who will be the best governor.
Great.
Just want to follow up a last question, and it'll be for Don Berwick, so if you want to keep your answers short, because I'm sure you have a lot of other things to get to today. You've called yourself the most progressive candidate in the race. This P word has become very popular, except Martha Coakley's not using it so much. I would argue because she's looking to the general election where you need to sort of come back into the middle a little bit, but call me crazy. You also call yourself the progressive jobs creator. Why are you more progressive than Steve Grossman?
I'm the only candidate firmly committed to single-payer health care, a highly progressive position in which we actually can add money back to the state treasury and add jobs at the same time. I'm the only candidate, because casinos, you've heard that. I have the strongest positions on the relief of poverty. I will end hunger, end chronic homelessness in the Commonwealth in my first term. I absolutely will do that. That's a guarantee to this Commonwealth. And I'll use the progressive approach to creating jobs. It's Steve's rhetoric, it's my plan. We will use smart growth in communities, we'll increase our investment in the innovation economy, we'll revolutionize our education system, which is far too battered right now by teaching you the test and standardized testings. I will stand up for teachers and their ability to create, and worker rights as fast as we can put them, as we can push them.
All my life, I think I have demonstrated a commitment to progressive values and to job creation and economic opportunity for all. When I said at the convention, which I was proud to win and be the nominee of the Democratic Party, that I'm trying to build one Commonwealth that leaves no one behind, that levels the playing field. For generations, women, people of color, and immigrants have been left out and left behind. I've shown as treasurer, particularly through the Small Business Banking Partnership and other ways, that I have leveled the playing field. This isn't rhetoric. My father used to say words are words, and promises are promises, but only performance is reality. As treasurer for 4 years, I've kept my promise. As governor, I'll do the same.
So I don't think just because you call things bold and progressive means they are. We all throw these labels around. I'm really more focused on what the actual ideas are, what I've been able to do as a DA and as an Attorney General, standing up against the Defense of Marriage Act, making sure we hold Wall Street accountable, saying we need to turn this economy around for everybody, give every kid a shot at a good education. Those are bold progressive ideas. I believe I can do that. I'm committed to it.
Are they too liberal?
I think voters will judge us on our values, what we've been able to accomplish, but campaigns are about the future. And this is really about who's going to bring us. I'm excited about where Massachusetts can go. I sense that people really want to move into the future with investment in our people, investment in mental health care, the kinds of things that will make us stronger.
But you don't use the word progressive, or I haven't heard you use the word progressive. Do you think that these two men sitting with you here today are too liberal?
I'm not going to make that judgment. That's up to
Okay.
voters. I know what I stand for.
Joe,
Yeah, I just have one question. We can go over a little, if you don't mind. The Boston City Council last week passed an ordinance that says the Boston police cannot hold an illegal immigrant. The mayor of Somerville said, we're welcoming illegal immigrants, we're not going to go prosecute them, we're not going to detain them. Would you agree with that, have a similar policy as governor?
I agree. I've said, and I believe, there's no such thing as an illegal person. These are people with us. They're human beings. They have human rights. Driver's licenses, yes. In-state tuition, yes. Protection from unscrupulous contractors in the underground economy, absolutely, yes. I think I cannot walk by a person on the street and say that they're not somebody I will help. I totally support them. And one of my endorsers, Senator Jamie Eltridge, has been a supporter of the Trust Act now in the legislature. I am firmly behind that. I think the Secure Communities Act is creating insecure communities, fear and hiding, and I commend what Mayor Curtatone has done, and I support this move.
Yeah, so I've said, obviously, like a Mayor Curtatone and a Mayor Walsh and the City Council and the Boston Police and the Somerville Police are closer to what they need for good community policing, for making sure people feel safe. The origins of secure communities were in making sure victims felt they could come forward. If that's not happening, I'm glad that Jay Johnson is relooking at it. I'm going to support that the mayors who had done that, and I think this is all open for the next governor to say, how do we address an issue in Massachusetts that has not been addressed at the federal level and make sure that our communities are safe?
When more than 50% of the people we've deported as a result of secure communities have no criminal record whatsoever, it's gone in the wrong direction. I've always felt this was wrong. Martha supported it. Now she's not sure. Bottom line is, I think that Joe Curtatone, I called him the morning after. I said, Joe, as a Somerville business owner for the last 45 years, I'm very proud of what you've done. And I would say the same thing to Marty Walsh. I think we need to find ways to not rip families apart, and secure communities has been ripping families apart, not to our benefit, to our detriment.
From a legal perspective on this, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'll refer to you.
But you can play one on the radio.
Yeah, you know it. No, the one thing that I find interesting about all this is that if you're here, you're undocumented, you're here illegally, you know, either you are, how are you surviving, right? So are you breaking Social Security laws? You know, how are you getting a job? Are you breaking, you know, laws in terms of your employment? So on the basis of you being here, undocumented, illegal, shouldn't you be shipped home? I mean, why is it so bad to take people that are not United States citizens and send them back to their home country?
Well, from
a legal perspective,
we've had a long, flawed program, frankly, with failure to act at the federal level for a long period of time. We do have families who are have Social Security, have numbers, they pay taxes, they're in schools, they are working, they're not committing crimes. They have become part of the fabric of the community. And
But isn't it a crime to take someone's social security number?
No, I'm not saying they're violating the law, but they've been given work numbers. There's a way in which we have a lot of people here who aren't necessarily citizens, and they have ways in which they partake in the community. I think that's what this discussion is about now, with failure of the federal government to understand what has happened across the country and saying we need to have, and I've always supported the DREAM Act in ways in which we can accommodate people who are here. They are investing in our communities. They're where a lot of our growth in small businesses come from in many of our communities.
Look, Washington is paralyzed. We haven't dealt with this issue, 12 million people, and they are looking for some decisions. But for me, one issue that I will raise, we haven't exactly covered it, is driver's licenses. Honestly, I can't understand why we'd want anybody driving around the roads of Massachusetts without a driver's education, without a driver's test, without a driver's licenses. That is just bad for the people of Massachusetts. So that's why I believe that all immigrants should have driver's licenses. I know there are plenty of people who disagree. But, you know, being governor is about taking a stand. And whether people agree with you or disagree with you, they want to look you in the eye and say, who are you? What do you stand for? What's the kind of leadership you're going to provide? I disagree with you on this issue, but I believe that you stand for something. And running for governor is about standing for something. I'm running because I believe that this is a time when jobs and economic security are the key issue, and we can't leave hundreds of thousands of people out of this discussion.
Let's be really clear. The status quo political system has generated more and more inequality, more and more desperation in people who don't know about their futures. We're letting people down, and it's time for a change. We need a new direction, and the direction is going to be about social justice and human rights and compassion and equality in society. Those have got to be the framework, architecture rules for building the communities we want. And you know what? Everyone in Massachusetts that I've met all over the state want that. Far, far more people in the state share progressive instincts than would ever call themselves progressive. This is a state that could be a beacon for the nation, and I want to be the governor that helps that agenda occur, not just on our behalf, but on behalf of a country that's getting into deeper and deeper trouble.
So I think we've made progress under Governor Patrick. It hasn't been flawless, no administration is, but in a very tough economy, we've invested in education, innovation, infrastructure. I think he's done a good job, and I think people in Massachusetts generally agree. The next governor, and I would love to be the next governor to take it up that next step. Let's build on what we've done, continue to invest in our kids and our workforce, address mental health issues, the kind of social work that I know we can do here, and we can be prosperous and fair here in Massachusetts. That's not what Charlie Baker stands for. And I believe that the next Democratic governor can make Massachusetts prosperous and fair.
And building on Deval Patrick's leadership, look, he guided the state through 3 of the worst years in 75 years. And when people said, Governor, pull back, hunker down, he says, no, I'm an optimist. I believe in the state. $1 billion in life sciences, clean energy and clean technology, 80,000 jobs, 5,500 companies. I mean, he's done an extraordinary job in bringing our economy back faster than almost any other state. People agree with him or disagree with him. They disagreed with him, a lot of people, on what he was prepared to do working with the federal government on the children on the Mexican border. But the fact of the matter is, he continues to be popular because he stands for something that matters in terms of progress and in terms of leveling a playing field.
And
that's leadership.
He didn't come up the normal political chain, running campaign after campaign. He came in from outside as someone with fresh ideas.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you all very much for weighing in. We really appreciate having you here. Of course, the Democratic candidates for governor, Martha Coakley, Don Berwick, and Steve Grossman. We want to thank you again for being here for the Boston Herald radio debate.
Thank you.